religious chauvinism to rabid nationalist fervor are beginning not to work.
This is who I am and whether I'm good or bad or achieving or not, all that's learned along the way.
Just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money.
I realized that I had the game wrong. That the game was to find out what I already was.
The United States government decides it needs some money, so it calls up the Federal Reserve and requests, say, $10 billion. The Fed replies, saying, sure, we'll buy $10 billion in government bonds from you. So the government takes some pieces of paper, paints some official-looking designs on them, and calls them Treasury bonds. Then it puts a value on these bonds to the sum of $10 billion and sends them over to the Fed. In turn, the people at the Fed draw up a bunch of impressive pieces of paper themselves, only this time calling them Federal Reserve notes, also designating a value of $10 billion to the set. The Fed then takes these notes and trades them for the bonds. Once this exchange is complete, the government then takes the $10 billion in Federal Reserve notes and deposits it into a bank account. And upon this deposit, the paper notes officially become legal tender money, adding $10 billion to the U.S. money supply. And there it is. $10 billion in new money has been created. So, now that we understand how money is created by this fractional reserve banking system, a logical yet elusive question might come to mind. What is actually giving this newly created money value? The answer? The money that already exists. The new money essentially steals value from the existing money supply. For the total pool of money is being increased irrespective to demand for goods and services. And as supply and demand finds equilibrium, prices rise, diminishing the purchasing power of each individual dollar. This is generally referred to as inflation, and inflation is essentially a hidden tax on the public.
What is the advice that you generally get? And that is, inflate the currency. They don't say debase the currency. They don't say devalue the currency. They don't say cheat the people who are saved. They say lower the interest rates. The real deception is when we distort the value of money. When we create money out of thin air, we have no savings, and yet there's so-called capital. So my question boils down to this. How in the world can we expect to solve the problems of inflation, that is, the increase in the supply of money, with more inflation?
Of course, it can't.
Other laws and rules in the Islamic economic system is that the money is not based on the fiat system, which is just paper, where it's based on confidence, whereby there's inflation up and down. So every year there's inflation, so you have to bring in interest to control the rate of inflation. No. In Islam, money is based on fixed resources, gold and silver. In gold and silver, these are real commodities which do not inflate like confidence-based paper money, whereby you can just literally print more money and this will devalue the entire system. Because, as you know, for a state to actually acquire money to distribute amongst people for circulation, it borrows from a bank. The bank charges interest on the money that it prints for the government, so that the government starts out in debt already. And then all the public taxes that are charged, the VAT in England and all the different service charges in America and all over the world in the capitalist nations, they all go to paying up a constant debt that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until there is more debt than there is resources and services to be able to pay for it. And this is when you have a bust. So you know there's booms and busts in the capitalist system. This is the case, and it is natural. There's always going to be a bust. Whereas in the Islamic system, there is no booms and busts. There's just constant, steady progression, because everything is based on gold and silver.
There is still one thing we have omitted from this equation, and it is this element of the structure which reveals the truly fraudulent nature of the system itself: the application of interest. When the government borrows money from the Fed, or when a person borrows money from a bank, it almost always has to be paid back with accrued interest. In other words, almost every single dollar that exists must be eventually returned to a bank with interest paid as well. But if all money is borrowed from the central bank and is expanded by commercial banks through loans, only what would be referred to as the principal is being created in the money supply. So then, where is the money to cover all of the interest that is charged? Nowhere. It doesn't exist. The ramifications of this are staggering, for the amount of money owed back to the banks will always exceed the amount of money that is available in circulation. This is why inflation is a constant in the economy, for new money is always needed to help cover the perpetual deficit built into the system, caused by the need to pay the interest. What this also means is that mathematically, defaults and bankruptcy are literally built into the system, and there will always be poor pockets of society that get the short end of the stick. An analogy would be a game of musical chairs, for once the music stops, somebody is left out to dry. And that's the point. It invariably transfers true wealth from the individual to the banks. For if you are unable to pay for your mortgage, they will take your property. This is particularly enraging when you realize that not only is such a default inevitable due to the fractional reserve practice, but also because of the fact that the money that the bank loaned to you didn't even legally exist in the first place.
In Islam, it's all focused about distribution of wealth. So, for example, also, there is the element of the fact that in Islam it is forbidden for anybody to hoard their wealth. Because in Islam, because there is no interest, there is no point leaving your money in a bank account doing nothing. Imagine a society where everyone is every day reinvesting back into the economy and spending their money back into the economy. There is no need to fearfully gather up your wealth and hoard it, fearing that there might be rainy days. Because in Islam, all the money that was available yesterday will be available tomorrow.